For the final part of our event today, we'll see Nigella talk to your Juno, a financial platform created by two sisters, Margot and Alexia, to educate and empower women and non-binary folks on all things money. And before I hand over to them, I'm still trying to keep us checking in the chat. I want to know what you're feeling amongst the whole event. So what are your beliefs around money? In the past 2 years, I'll share mine. I decided that it's time for me to not feel guilty about asking for more money. I think it's something we all deserve, and not just a bit more money. I want fuckloads of money, and I'm okay with it. So I want to know what you guys think and your opinions on money. Plus one, and I guess that means you all agree and think the same thing. That's amazing. Money is power. Where we put it is a choice. It's definitely okay to want more money. If I could make us all rich, I would. Still feel awkward talking about it. That's okay too. I'm getting better at asking for it. Do you know what it is for me? So I am really into nutrition and wellness, and particularly around the topics of like female health issues and whatever. And so with that, of course, honey is a nutritious thing. And I came up with this idea a couple of years ago of the honey dream. And the day that I can step into Waitrose, Holland and Barrett and buy the good Manuka, I know I've made it. Tesco value won't be an option anymore. So that sort of rounds it up for me. But anyway, I could go on all day long. So I'm going to hand over to Naj, the good Manuka. Yeah, I'm going to hand over to Naj, and she will be hosting this talk around money, women, and breaking the bias. Go ahead, Naj.
Hello. It's me again. I was considering doing a wardrobe change, like the Oscars or the BAFTAs. See, I'm so English. Thank you, for all of you. But I chose to scarf grilled cheese instead. So I had an option: clothes or grilled cheese with brie. Not even any regular grilled cheese. That's some money dreams right there. I'm really happy that we're talking about this topic, and I'm super excited that we're talking about this topic with your Juno. So as Margot and I believe Lois is joining us and is going to be spotlighted. I'm excited for you to hear about your Juno and the collaboration that Upfront is having with your Juno as well. So we're waiting for them to be highlighted.
Hello everyone.
Hello, lovely to be back here again. Hi Naj.
Hello, are you together or is it two different screens?
No. We are together.
Oh, that's even more wonderful. Okay, I'm waiting for this presentation screen to go so I can see you fully. And then we'll just be three gals chatting. Okay.
Maybe while we wait until the presentation charges, I know you've all met the wonderful Lois already. I'm happy to introduce myself.
Yes, please.
So I'm Margot. There we go, now I can see you. Happy days. I'm one of the two co-founders of Juno, which I started with my sister about a year and a half ago now. And we just recently announced our latest round of funding. And our mission is to accelerate the closing of the gender wealth gap. And we're doing this by building something that we call the Duolingo of money. So we're hoping to demystify money and finally teach people what it is and how we can best use it to our advantage. Because I think it's an unfortunate reality that we don't get taught enough about money and how to use it, and I think women miss out on the most around that. Mm-hmm. So we're really, really passionate about closing that. So yeah, that's us.
That's amazing. I feel like I'm on Shark Tank, and I want to say I want to give you for 50%. I'll give you 100. Instantly got
I'll
what
take it. I'll take it.
Duolingo is instantly speaks about accessibility. It's a journey. There's a growth in it. And from everything I've seen about Juno, from what you're doing to how you talk about it, it's really about accessibility. It isn't about a cool kids club that you want more cool kids to be in, or just kind of like this is for everyone. So I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit more about Juno, the actual app, and from moving from the app, talking about why investment.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to start, and then Juno. I called you Juno. This is how much we identify
So on
with
brand.
the business.
So on brand.
The distinction doesn't exist anymore. So Lois can speak more about it. So yeah, I think the app, how we've built it, is really to try to create the most engaging learning experience as possible. We all know and saw in the chat how people feel about money. Money is a topic that is charged with emotions. For a lot of us, it's anxiety, it's stress, but also there's so much attached to it, our self-worth. It's a tricky topic, and it's one that most people don't like to speak about. And so we've really tried to see how can we create a curated learning experience so that we have this kind of impression of kind of wiser older sister that we all wish we had, that is really cool but that knows everything about money and that can teach us all about it. And I think that's something that we've tried to integrate into the platform, and also really bringing forward role models, financial role models that are women, because unfortunately there aren't enough of them yet. And I think if we can see ourselves represented in the financial space, women that are investing and being like, hey, she's just like me, then I think it's a huge step in the right direction.
Definitely. And I think the kind of Duolingo of money is both a fun way to describe Juno, but I think it also touches on something really important, and that is that when we look at money, there's not only a gap in our education systems where we don't learn about it at school, we don't learn about money in any particular stage of life. Not when we leave school, not when we go to an apprenticeship, for instance, if we start university. Many of us don't have the privilege to live in care structures or family structures where conversations around money are normalized, or even where there are healthy money management practices to pass down to future generations. So I really see Juno filling that gap, and it's really interesting in just the kind of 4 to 5 months of launching the app to see the types of women and non-binary people that are in the community, because there is such a huge range of people in the space, from people as young as kind of 19 to 20 years old who are kind of having a head start to their relationship with money, all the way to people nearing retirement and trying to figure out, how do I actually bring myself to be in the best position possible to create a retirement structure that is supportive, that actually helps me to live the life I want to lead. And seeing us being able to be that hand holder across all of these different journeys has just been fascinating to watch.
I'd love to ask actually everyone in the community here, what's a big money goal that you're working towards? Because it's always, I think it's something we don't speak about enough, and we all have those money goals. So
Absolutely.
maybe if you want to share in the chat, like what's a big thing that's on your mind at the moment?
Buying a house. Haley, Marianne.
Retire as soon as possible, I feel you.
Working less, yep.
Emergency funds.
Paying off debts. Pensions.
Getting a farm. Love that.
Tess, tell us more.
While everyone's putting the chat some of their money goals, I would love to talk about what are some of the both bias and confidence barriers that you see typically women and non-binary folks are facing when it comes to money. I know for me, I shared this with both of you when we touched base before this, but I often have treated money as a one-night stand because it had so much power over my parents' life that I wanted to go the complete opposite way and kind of be like, yeah, I had a good time, doesn't matter, see you later. That kind of it's a false flippancy, it's a false sense of empowerment to say you have no power over me. And so I know for me, one of my barriers is I'm afraid of being too money conscious, or to give money too much power to affect my sense of contentment or happiness. And that's something that I need to kind of overcome. So what do you see both in just money in general, but as well as investing, some of the bias and confidence barriers that women and non-binary folks experience?
Yeah.
I think maybe before diving into that latter part of the question, I just want to highlight something in what you just shared, Nash, which is around your own personal story with money and being able to dissect parts of your childhood to help you understand your relationship with money today, because this is something we speak a lot about at your Juno, and it's actually what the app starts off with, is mindset. Because like every other area of life, it's so critical to step outside of yourself and understand what factors actually shape where you are today. And for a lot of us, it doesn't start with us, right? It's a much more intergenerational story to actually begin to piece together why we have the relationship with money that we have. And I'm seeing some people kind of echo this in the chat with their remarks. So I'd be super curious to also hear about what your relationship is like with money today, but also how your upbringing has informed that, and what kind of messaging you were taught about when it comes to money. Because I know for me personally, I grew up, and we were discussing in the previous panel, in a matriarchal household, but my story with money started many generations before me. It started with my grandmother in Ghana, who, as a secretary, couldn't actually afford to keep two children and couldn't afford to feed them, bathe them, educate them. And so my mom was raised by her father, who kind of ended their relationship and moved to the US, while my grandma kept one child with her in Ghana. And how that kind of manifested in my mom's life was that her entire education was focused on getting the best grades possible, doing the most she could to kind of take herself out of her situation and build as much security as possible. And security for her financially translated to conservatism. It's this kind of hyper saving, save, but that's the limit. And so for her, now she's 58 years old, and only now she's starting to look into investing, because for so long she's had this fear around money, this kind of conservative values when it comes to money that really, again, didn't start with her, comes from a much bigger intergenerational story. And that's definitely trickled down to me, although I think I've, through Juno, started to address those things quite luckily before she did. But I think it's really important to just take a step back before diving into the topics like investing, like pensions, a lot of these implementation topics, to first understand the why, your personal why, but also the whys behind the financial system that we're now all a part of, but didn't necessarily choose to be in, and how this system upholds and supports and encourages and embraces certain individuals and how it leaves others behind. So I'd like to just preface the conversation before diving into some of the other questions you had.
Yeah, and I would love to hear more also about your personal upbringing, Margot, with money and how you learned about money. For me, my relationship with money is very different because, again, I'm also a founder. I'm also a business model designer. And the whole goal is, if we want to make a more equitable businesses, we have to be able to learn and understand money. But for me, mindset really is starting with money is part of wealth and how I define wealth. And how I define wealth had a lot to do with how I define my own, the stories of myself, the story of saying, because I've never had, I will never have, or the stories that say, because I never had, now I will obtain. And so you can make all of these weird promises with yourself depending on your childhood. So you can have different reactions. You can say, you can go forward and say, now I'm going to prioritize money. You can go the other way and say, money is not an option for me. And so really working out what wealth is a layered and complicated thing when you're trying to understand systematic racism. One of my projects is working with the institution called the Harriet Tubman Effect, and we are not only dismantling white supremacy, but we are doing reparations in 5 areas of industry. And so part of the work is understanding what reparations look like. Again, I'm America, so this is very kind of American-based language. And so we're saying, okay, what does it look like to bring reparations on a mental, social, financial, time, wealth base? So we actually have these 4 indicators of wealth for us. And money comes underneath those indicators, right? How, if time is a wealth value for you, then money has to lean into your wealth value. And that's one thing I'll say is I spent so many years judging myself for not knowing enough about money that I never took the time to even understand what I felt about money, what my values about money were, because I was so busy either hustling or seeing people who exploited their money or seeing money be a stressful factor. And I think right now I'm in the stage of life where before I even develop any like financial habits, I need to establish my financial values. And that also comes with a mindset and say, why do I think this way? What do I believe? Why do I believe that way? And how am I going to implement that into my life? And nobody tells you that money, what you think about money is a ongoing journey. It's a discipline and it's a practice. It's not saying at 21 years old, this is my thoughts about money, and it's frozen. It's going to constantly change and ebb and flow. And people don't make money, financial literacy that flexible. And people treat financial literacy like it's a thing that's only about getting rich, when financial literacy is so much more. It's about how you take care of yourself. It's how you think about the future, the privilege to be not a short-term thinker like a lot of people who are in marginalized communities, but to be a long-term thinker. And so I love that you're bringing that point, because I feel a little bit hard. I'm a little harsh on myself because I'm still developing my financial philosophy. And part of that is confronting healing, confronting childhood, confronting how I feel about money, because it's been used as a system, as a oppressive system for so long. And nobody tells you it takes a couple of years to do that work. Everybody makes it seem like you're going to do a course, you're going to go to Dave Ramsey, you're going to go to Financial Peace University, and then you're going to walk out the other side saying, I know all the thoughts I'll ever have about money. So that speaks to where I am, the journey that I'm in. But Margot, what has been your journey with money and financial literacy and mindset?
Yeah, completely. I think there's a few things in what you said that really resonated. And I think back to the question of biases that we touched on briefly at the start, is this idea that women and men get spoken to very differently when it comes to money. So actually our conditioning is, as Lois highlighted, it's intergenerational, it's from our families, but it's also the society as a whole. And there was a really interesting linguistic study that was done by Sterling Bank, and they found that 90% of finance articles targeted at men focus on growing their wealth. So it's this idea of like expansion, abundance, investing, how can you make more money? And 73% of financial articles targeted at women focused on reining it in and spending less and not being an excessive spender, the coupons, the budgets, and it's this idea of scarcity. And so they looked at the kind of mental models that men and women have when it comes to money. And the best analogy they had was, for men, it's like a river, it's a flow. So money is coming in constantly and it's leaving. So it's okay to spend money on things because it's this flow. Whereas for women, it's a pond. It's this idea of like, there's a limited amount, it's scarce. I better keep it where I can find it and see it and not lose it out of sight. And every time I spend it, it's a little bit I'm taking out of that pond that I'll never get back. Yeah. And this focus is damaging us so much because there's a limit to how much you can budget on your life, and it also doesn't make life fun. Like, I love my takeaway coffee. I want to stop being told to stop buying the latte. It's so frustrating to hear that, when the reality is, tell me how to invest, tell me how to make my money grow, because that's actually, there's no cap in how much I can make my money grow. But I'm not going to live miserably because you're telling me for the little coupons and I can save 10p there and 10p there. So I think for me, a huge reclamation has been around like understanding that this is a deep cultural conditioning, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. I really encourage everyone now looking at magazines, looking at like Sex and the City, you know, like the way she speaks about money is like, oh no, I spent 40,000 on shoes, how did I do that? Poor me, I'm a careless spender. So that plays a huge role in that. And I think maybe in the chat people can share, like, who's ever said I'm bad with money? And it's just something that, like, we've been told we are, and it's something we accept, but it's like no one's taught us anything else. Like, I'm bad at yoga because I've never done it before, but it's something we can improve and get better at. And that's something that I think is a really important message.
I wished I had a church organ sound effect just behind your voice. What you just said resonated so deeply to the point where I'm like, we can finish now. This is all this talk needed to be. I've seen those same studies as job descriptions, how certain words are coded. And I hear you talk about men and then women, and then I just think of, wow, like Black, brown, disabled, queer people, all of our intersectionalities, because part of my job, as I like to call myself a business activist, is to let people understand that money is a tool, but never use the tool as a key to white supremacy. Is to make sure that, because there's just one messaging sometimes as a Black person of generational wealth that is just modeling white supremacy and the patriarchy and saying, let's model, because even when people teach women about money, they're teaching women about money sometimes as if they were men, right? Or the values that men prioritize, right? Because good financial values are good financial values, but the things that how money is prioritized, it can be shared with men. Like you're saying, well, don't spend, or again, I referenced Dave Ramsey, who's kind of like, credit cards are bad, buy your own car. And I was like, that's a lot of privilege and a lot of, I think there's also, I wasn't planning on going into this, but I think this might be a barrier conversation. Those cultural differences create a lot of shame. And I think shame is a key word when we talk about financial literacy and how you deal with money. Shame keeps you from feeling agency, makes you feel like you feel shame for wanting more, you feel shame for having less. And so even if we talk about money, we don't want to talk about how money makes us feel. So what has been your experience, whether it's with your community, with personally, on how shame and money kind of intersects?
Yeah, I think for me there's a quote that I love, which is from Brené Brown, which is, shame derives on secrecy. And I think that's the thing. It's like money is such a taboo and we don't speak about it, and we feel like we're alone in our struggles. Whereas they're so universal. And I think for us the biggest piece has been like, let's start opening up these conversations, because the more we can speak about it, the more we realize we're not alone in feeling those feelings.
Yeah, I can completely echo that. I think the secrecy behind money only upholds the oppressive systems that we live in. And one thing that we really try to encourage everyone to do is to lift the veil, lift the cloak off of money, which is much easier said than done. And I think, the whole phrase of lean in, like, who can really lean in? Who has the privilege to lean in? Who has the privilege to speak up in a room? Who has the privilege to bring a conversation that is so taboo to the table? But I think in all of our circles, we have at least one person that we trust, whether that is a sibling, a family member, whether it's a friend, whether it's a colleague. And I think even in those micro circles, in those micro communities, or if you don't have people in your direct life, seeking incredible communities like Upfront, where you can have and connect with like-minded people and start to have those conversations. I think that's really where it starts. And I'm seeing Teresa here in the chat speak about her learning about money so that lessons can be passed on to Teresa's kids. And I think that's the powerful thing too. It doesn't start with us, but it doesn't end with us either. And just one conversation, whether that's a conversation with yourself, with a friend, with a colleague, with a community member, that can be the catalyst for so much change. So I would definitely say that's one big learning I've had and definitely seen in the community as well. And I think that's really the value of that safe space, actually, that we really try to build into Juno, because so much of finance, and especially fintech products, this community element isn't really central to it all. finance is just seen as a tool. But as you've said, Naj, the emotion, the kind of personal experiences with it is completely removed from product. And so actually recentering individuals, recentering communities in conversations around money, I think can be such a powerful catalyst for change.
I again, once again, I'm on a panel of women that I'm like, let's talk forever and never stop talking. I think that's what I love about Upfront is before we can even talk about things like money, just the practice of being upfront, of learning confidence, of speaking out is so valuable. It's funny how one thing in an area can affect another area. It took, being in a community like Upfront and finding my confidence in who I am as a person before it could be reflected in my finances. And I mentioned this last conversation, but the Black tribe hierarchy of needs is self-actualization, community actualization, and then the top is cultural perpetuity, meaning how do we create for the culture? What do we leave behind? What do we give to others? All of those things are so intertwined. And the way we talk about money in a way that is not like centering capitalism, that is, I think for me, I think intrinsically, there's so much data, UNICEF has all the data that when women have money, it changes communities, that the global poverty rate would be transformed if more women had money. It's just a fact. The way women spend monies and grow their communities are completely different. And so when we are empowered through just from being who we are, women, non-binary folks, people who are marginalized, we pour back into our community and we transform our community. So what are some other values or ways that we should incorporate into our financial mindsets? Because I think a lot of us are afraid of being bad people, to be honest. I know that I'm concerned about being a bad person, but money doesn't make you bad or good. Money is just a tool. But I would love to know some of the values that are a part of your Juno and the way that you talk about money and the values that are in your community that we can maybe look at as incorporating to our own financial values.
Absolutely. I think the first one that jumps to mind for me is radical inclusivity. And I think it's something I've seen over the past 2 hours in this community that is really in abundance. Because money is so charged and we all have different experiences of it based on our culture, our race, our ethnicity, class, ability, gender, creating a space for people to just show up as themselves, creating zones that are judgment free, that really allow people to bring their experiences to the table in the most authentic way possible, I think is the first step when it comes to money and when it comes to truly being transformative. In the community, it's interesting. We are based in the UK, here in London, but it's fascinating to me just to see how international our community has grown in such a short space of time. We have people from Saudi Arabia, we have women from Brazil, we have community members from Nigeria, Canada, all around the world. And so with all of that geographical diversity on top of the other intersectional layers, there are so many experiences and stories to be shared, and having that holding space for people to show up as themselves, I think is really key. Now, one practical way that this has kind of shown itself in our community is that we have an anonymous feature in our community space where people can as easily write as themselves with a profile with their identity attached to their question, their concern, their statement, but they can equally conceal their identity and post anonymously. And through that anonymous feature, we've had such intricate and deeply personal stories being shared of community members, for instance, applying for the job of their dream, getting to the interview phase, and then being harassed by a male interviewer. And asking the community, what do I do now? I found the job of my dreams. It's gonna give me financial security, but I've had this deeply traumatic experience. We've had someone come on there who is in a heterosexual relationship and the man is the breadwinner. And although the relationship is abusive, he holds the material power in that union. And so now she's questioning if she can actually leave it. Can she actually flee that situation when he holds that much power in the relationship? So for me, having that anonymous space has been really powerful to just allow people to show up as they are and have complete safety and privacy to get resolved to the burning questions and concerns on their mind. What about you?
I just wanted to comment to you and to Margot, hearing Lois talk, and hearing that you're building such intimate community while building a fintech company is exactly what the world needs, and exactly why female founders, matter. You know what I mean? Whether you're woman or non-binary, like the way you see things, the way that you build things are so different, and they're going to make such an impact. And just hearing how much you're prioritizing story and vulnerability in your fintech platform feels. I hope more fintech platforms model that. I hope crypto NFTs can just look at Juno and say, how can we be less terrible? So yeah, any thoughts on what Lois was saying?
Yeah, I fully agree with what Lois has been saying. I think one of the other ones has been learn, unlearn, and relearn. And so it's really this acknowledgement that there is a lot of unlearning that needs to happen as well when it comes to money. The conditioning that we've been told, the systems that hold our current money beliefs are systems that are, as you said, deeply rooted in capitalism. And actually, our self-worth is so attached to our financial situation. And I think that for me has been a huge learning of trying to detach that, because obviously my life, the wealth of my life, as you were saying, is linked to so many aspects, and that's such a narrow definition, and unlearning that has been a huge process. But I really like the example of Alice, what you shared in the chat about just like sharing with a friend, just in full transparency, your financial situation. And what a gift that is to have a friend that you can do that with. And if only we could all do this, even if you're anonymous. Like, I don't know how much regular people, like, am I spending enough on groceries? Am I spending too much? I'd love to have a look at the bank statement of someone else and just feel that sense of like benchmarking. And it's an area that plays such a huge role in our lives, and yet we're so in the dark about what we're doing about it. It's like, what is everyone else doing? Can we just speak about that? Because I think that the on a practical level, learning what to do is one thing, but the sense of relief of knowing like this is actually normal, or this is in line with what everyone else is doing. Having these conversations I found to be so different, because it takes such a burden of this constant anxiety of like, am I doing the right thing with my money?
And I think you see it in all areas of your life, from the things like the everyday things like buying groceries or, your membership to a co-working space, but all the way to your salary, for instance. And I think salary negotiation and transparency is a really interesting intersection, because the system thrives and relies on silence to actually keep us at the bottom. And it's only when you start to have those conversations. I remember a Twitter thread that went viral last year, and it was about an Asian woman who started speaking to her team about what salaries they were on. And I think she found out that she was being paid 40K less than a male counterpart on the same level, doing the same role. And she would have never have found that out. The system wouldn't have told her, her company wouldn't have told her, this man maybe wouldn't have organically told her unless she started that conversation. And I think it's so powerful, from salaries to equity, if you work in a startup, to really understand where you are and where others are, and how the system is actually supporting you or intentionally leaving you behind.
Yeah, completely. I think there's been a few questions about resources in terms of like speaking about salaries and stuff like that. We'll share a bit more about Juno as well, and how you can access it. I think it's a topic that's really, really close to our heart. And I think having those first steps, and maybe if it's the first time you're having this conversation, maybe doing it not with your colleague, but starting with a friend, and then slowly getting more and more comfortable about it, because we've been made to feel like this is such a shame, that it's so much shame attached to it. There's a stat that says we'd rather there's like this is a mouthful. We're 7 times more likely to speak to a complete stranger about our own death or about our sex life than about money. Can you imagine that? We prefer speaking about our own death than about money, this thing that makes the world go round. Like, how insane is that? So it's not your fault if it makes you feel awkward. It's not your fault if you're ashamed of speaking about it. That's completely normal, and take it one step at a time. And maybe it's about being anonymous to begin with, and then slowly building up that confidence. Share in your group chat with your girlfriends. Be like, hey, can we speak about money? Like, how much are you earning? What are you spending on? Anyone keen to like exchange bank statements with me and have a look at it?
And one more point I want to add before I mean, we have to mention the fact that you just raised 2 million. Is it pounds? I'm an American, so you're gonna help me out here. So I want to hear the radical vision that you have for Juno and what raising was like for you. But one thing I want to say to incorporate into this journey is radical forgiveness. Forgiveness, forgiving yourself for whatever choices you've made in the past, for not learning more, for getting into a relationship where there's financial abuse, to not saving enough, to hoarding, to not being where you want to be in life. I think you can't confront shame. You can't overcome a system that puts a disproportionate amount of blame on marginalized people, on women, without employing radical forgiveness in this process. And so just take some time to say, Najla, I forgive myself for ordering $300 worth of takeout food last month, to the point where they sent me a reward for ordering so much takeout food. You know what I mean? Like, I have to forgive myself for that. And all the other months that I did that, that's a small thing, but there's a lot of shame. And without forgiveness, we can often operate in self-sabotage. And so you say, I already messed up. I'm going to keep messing up. I can't change, so I'm going to keep making the same decisions. And so I really encourage everyone just to keep applying radical forgiveness and self-love, that you are not the decisions that you make. And even by using self-love, I think it'll change our financial habits and why we spend, and being more thoughtful of how we spend with money. If we're not turning the switch on and off thinking about money. So I hope that's helpful. So I just want, of course, again, you just raised 2 million pounds. I hope I'm saying it correctly. Help American. And so I want to hear, I guess this is selfish for me because I'm also a founder. What was the process like? What was the confidence journey of going out there and raising money? Did you have any insecurities about raising a certain amount, or what kept you confident and kept you going in the process?
Yeah. I mean, it's notoriously difficult as a female founder to raise capital. And the first thing I would say is my sister and I were the co-founders. And I think being white women, we also face a huge amount of privilege. I think being a Black woman and raising capital is so much harder, and the statistics show that. So I think the first step is acknowledging that we had it a lot less difficult than other people do. I think it was a gradual process. We raised a first round of funding of 230,000 in March, and that's when Lois then ended up joining. And that felt like a huge deal at the time. It was like the biggest amount of money that I'd ever seen, and I was just like, this is never gonna end. We have so much money. And I think bit by bit, it's allowed us to build out a team and to really see what you said before, like money is a tool, and money is a tool in business to create like life-changing impact for people. And actually we can be the facilitators and the containers of just like receiving the inflow of money and passing it on to the people who can really have the impact. And that's all that money does. It's not a mean or greedy thing, but by us having more money, especially from the venture capital industry, which is notoriously doesn't fund, so much impact-driven businesses, we're benefiting the world by doing this. And I think that's a shift that happened gradually by raising that first amount of funding. I mean, going into VCs, it was interesting. I was 20. I'm 24 now. I was 23 at the time when we raised. So not only am I a woman, but I'm way too young to be a founder as well. No past experience in that space whatsoever. And I think what we found was that, you know, like a huge amount of people that we spoke to were like, we lost all credibility when they met us, and they're like, there's no way, you don't fit the mold of the people that we're wanting to back. And then the other ones were like, whoa, this is a superpower. There's no fintechs that work like you're building it. And actually, you're going to be able to tap into an audience that no one else has been able to capture, because there's no one else like you that's actually been able to raise funding and to build those types of businesses. So I think if there's any founders listening to this, that, you know, it's really difficult. I'm not going to lie, it was a really tough process, but like leveraging what makes us different to our advantage rather than trying to fit the mold. And it's back to a thing of like, we don't have to lean in. We don't have to be like the guys at the table, because we're never going to be as good as them, because we're just not them. But actually what makes us different is what makes us better. And if we can tap into that full force, those are going to get it, and those are going to back us. And now our cap table, it's 75% women and people from diverse ethnic backgrounds. So those are the ones who got it, what we're trying to do, and those are the ones who funded us.
I love when we're able to tell, we don't need your dollars. We got all of these people who are willing to. It's my favorite thing where I'm just kind of like, we don't need your dollars. Excuse me, we can't hear you. So we're closing out, and I just want, honestly, to give you both the floor. This is probably one of the most compassionate conversations about money and financial literacy that I've had in a really long time. So what are some things, again, the whole theme of today is breaking the bias and overcoming confidence barriers. Lauren often talks about this wall that we all have to take down. And so if right now you were handing us hammers and chisels, what are those things that we should take away to kind of start breaking down those walls that we've put around ourselves, but also that society has put around us?
That is a good question. I think the first one that comes to mind with me is, again, going back to where I started, and that is, it doesn't start with you. It isn't your fault. It is systemic, and balancing that need to do what is in your power to bring yourself to your definition of financial freedom, but not taking on the burden of the system that was designed to keep us where we are and keep us at the bottom. That is not ours to fix. And I think each of us has tools in our power through financial literacy to really build out a future that is in line with our values and in line with where we want to go.
Yeah, that was beautifully captured. Yeah. Lois has just the best way with words. Sometimes I listen to her.
No, she, I mean, really does.
Is she
really
reading the script? Like, where's this coming from? Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think for me, it's like, be willing to see your current situation as changeable, and especially your current identity, in terms of how you feel about money. Maybe you are at a place where you're bad with money currently, or you're made to believe that you're bad with money, but that can change, and everything can change. And it's about having that beginner's mindset and being like, cool, actually, you know what? Money has been a topic in my life that hasn't been a source of joy, and that's been holding me back. And I have never been taught about money in the way that it would have wanted to be taught. And I'm willing to take step 1, step 2, undo all the limiting beliefs that I have, and relearn it in a way that supports me in a really powerful way. And yeah, I think it's been life-changing for me, and I hope it can be for everyone else.
And I think maybe one more thing, if I can, is the journey through financial literacy can sometimes feel long, and that there's a lot of different layers of knowledge you need to have to really get to wherever it is you want to go. But I think don't forget the impact that your everyday experiences have on supporting your vision of the world you want to live in. think about your daily expenditure, your daily pound, your coin, your dollar, your whatever currency you use, and how you can actually use your money as your vote. Use your money as a vote to the type of world that you believe in, to the type of world you want to live in. When you go out, are you, getting a coffee from a chain, or are you going to the black owned cafe that just opened down the block? When you order online, are you funding Jeff Bezos, or are you going to a small LGBT business that stocks whatever product you're looking to buy? How does your spending actually tie in with your values? And I think that's something powerful we can all do every single day as we kind of move towards this roadmap of where we want to go and where we want to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. Don't forget the now, because it all layers on to defining who you are and how you actually live holistically as an individual, and tying together all of these different parts of your life to define what makes you you. How do your decisions, how does your money, how does your coin actually support this version and definition of yourself? So I think that's something we can all walk away with and implement practically in our day-to-day lives.
I'm like, I love everything. I wish I was writing notes myself, but I'm here with both of you. But thank you so much, Lois and Margot. I'm so excited about your Juno. I have downloaded 16 budgeting apps from YNAB to Everyday. Has not worked for me. I think I need to go back to some mindset and learning. So I'm excited to do that with Juno. And that allows me to share some other exciting news is that upfront, we'll be partnering with Juno, specifically our global bonds community. So if you don't know, Upfront has a couple of different ways you can interact with us. Our content, we have our course, which is a 6-week course, and it's all about starting your personal kind of self-confidence revolution. Then we also have the global bonds community. If you are interested in the intersection of community and anything, community and activism, community and financial literacy, then you can be part of our global bonds community, which is going to be opening up publicly in just in a few months or so. But with Juno, not only are we going to have access to a financial coach, but we're going to be investing as a community. Like, this is real talk, our value. We're investing as a community. We're going to be taking turns managing this fund. We are all putting about £5 or so, more for me because I'm an American and the American dollar and it's something here and there, into this fund, and it's going to help us give scholarships to our course, which we have had hundreds of women who have been a part of our course. And again, confidence and financial literacy go hand in hand. We, like what Lois is saying, what Margot's saying, we need to practice being the people we want to be. And one way we practice that is how we spend our money, who we spend our money with and on and for. And so if you are interested in that, you can, again, follow us on Instagram, go on our newsletter, hear more about this collaboration. Again, funding as a community, not just individuals, but truly crowd venture capitalists together, which is such a cool concept. So thank you both of you. I'm actually going to London on Wednesday.
What?
So if you want to see your girl, you know.
Incredible.
Both of you for being here. I hope this talk was really helpful to some of you, and I will kick it back to our host, Haley.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so what an event. I feel like it has been a great couple of hours, so much learning. I hope that the event has not only helped you to break the bias, but to pick it up, kick it, smash it, throw it someplace else and tell it not to come back. My last question that I want to leave you with in the chat and us interacting is, what is one step that you're going to take to overcome a confidence barrier that you are experiencing in your life right now? Let me know in the chat. Yeah, speak up more and not give a fuck. Yep. Talk more about money. I think I want to talk more about money as well with my family and with people close to me, because I think there's still such a misconception about that. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So remember that upfront, we are on a mission to change confidence for 1 million women and non-binary folk by 2023. And in order for us to do that, we need to do it together as a community, as a belonging. And so what we've done is, as Lauren said earlier, we're offering 10% off our course for Bond 6, which starts in June. And for every woman that or non-binary person who takes part in the course, their peers, they get to know about upfront, they get to hear more, they get to see the change. So with that, I also want to share that connect with us on socials, connect with us in the community, in circle if you're already a part. Share how you're feeling about today's events and tag us on socials. Give me some feedback. I'm open to it. This was my first public speaking thing. It was very interesting, but I'm feeling good. So yeah, I'm so happy to see you all, so many global bonders and so many people from our private Nike and Lottie bonds. It's been awesome. I want to thank you all for being patient and for joining me on this 3 hours, and hopefully to some more stuff. So see you all in the community. And Jill is, I'm not going to ditch Jill again. I'm here. So Jill, if you can put on our Leaving Exiting song, and yeah, see you all soon.